I suppose the obvious first question is, was the president right to walk away? Given his description of what was happening, they were willing not only to forego the test, but also to denuclearize part of their operation. They wanted some concessions on sanctions. Was he right to walk away?
Yeah, actually, I think he was right to walk away. What gets lost since this occurred, which is only a few hours ago, is the concern that a lot of people had that our president would give away a lot. We wouldn't get very much for some version of the deal, and clearly that's not the case. He obviously went in with some idea of what was okay and what wasn't okay, and it turns out that he was not willing to give up the sanctions, which have obviously had a significant effect for what the North Koreans were offering. So I thought he was right.
So he was right to walk away. Was he right to go into the summit to begin with? Because there are some people who want to second guess and say the reason why he didn't get the deal he wanted is because it hadn't been prepared sufficiently.
Yeah, I think that's, I think in one way that's a fair criticism. I mean, one of the things that I'm very supportive of is having conversations or having meetings with the North Koreans. I mean, we've never had anything like this, and it cuts both ways. It clearly gives a dictator, a really, really bad guy. It gives him oxygen. He does, however, have nuclear weapons. He does want to, by all reports, improve the future of his people. And I think the engagement of our president has certainly opened that door. The downside of that is historically, presidents don't go to these without it all being pre-cooked, if you will. And that's clearly not the case with President Trump. So and it's a long way and it's a big commitment and all of that. But if eventually we can get to a point where this peninsula is denuclearized, then I think all that will be worth it. What I worry about is if that doesn't happen, if Kim Jong-un walks away and we resume or we return to where we were before President Trump started this engagement, then there's not much room for maneuver, and I worry about the downside of that.
Admiral, you spent some of your naval career in the Pacific, and you spent a fair amount of time dealing with the Chinese. How does this read against our relationship with the Chinese? Obviously, North Korea is important because they have nuclear weapons, but China in the longer term is a much more important relationship for the United States.
Well, it's sort of two pieces. I've worried about the Korean Peninsula because I don't think there's any place in the world that could explode more dramatically than that and quickly than that peninsula. And so world leaders need to pay a lot of attention to that. That said, I think the relationship between the U.S. and China in the 21st century is the most important bilateral relationship in the world because of our economies and obviously because we have an emerging China who wants to be a world power. So engaging there in every aspect of that relationship, the financial piece, the economic piece, the military piece, the diplomatic piece, all of that is absolutely critical. And we need to stay engaged on that, including one question that comes out of this this summit is, what is China going to do? And we need to pay attention to that.
And let's talk about that military piece, because we spent a lot of time on Bloomberg talking about the trade piece, but we may overlook sometimes the military piece. We have those, China would call them islands. We would not call them islands. They built up there in the South China Sea. Is the United States handling that situation properly? I know every once in a while we run a ship past there, or we fly some planes over it.
I think what we're doing recently and being more aggressive, sending the right signals from the standpoint of freedom of navigation, and these are international waters, they are not owned by China, is really important, and we need to stay with that and keep that working through all channels as well, not just the military channel, but that we're not going away. China would like to see us leave the area, actually. We are going to be there supporting our allies. We have strong alliances with both Japan and South Korea, and we have other friends in the area as well. So our presence, our persistence, and our pushing back on Xi Jinping and China is really important.